The Master Rules are a series of changes which coincide with the transition from one era to the next. Going from the Duel Monsters era to GX, there was no major change which would require new rules to be implemented. But when moving to the 5Ds era, the first batch of Master Rules came into effect. The most notable change was with the introduction of tuners and Synchro monsters. But there are also a few minor changes I would like to cover first. The term Sacrifice Summon was changed to Tribute Summon, or Advanced Summon. I was unaware of this change, and had assumed that it had always been called the Tribute Summon. This does help to better explain the name of cards like Advanced Force and Advanced Draw, which deal with Tribute Summoned monsters. The term Sacrifice was also replaced by Release, another change to which I was unaware. These changes were later reverted, so they did not have the biggest impact in the long run. The Fusion deck was also changed to the Extra deck, which is good future-proofing, since later eras would add new types of extra deck monsters. Other changes introduced in what I will be collectively calling Master Rule 1 were formal limitations on deck sizes. At one point, your main deck could contain any number of cards equal to or greater than 40. Now the main deck is limited to a minimum of 40 and a maximum of 60 cards. Finally, the newly branded Extra deck is limited to 0 to 15 cards, which has since become pretty contentious. Prior to this, players could run 3 copies of every legal Fusion monster in the Fusion deck, which was not good for deck registration or record keeping. Some of the video games had already implemented a Fusion deck limit of 30 cards, but it is interesting to think about what a larger Extra deck in the contemporary game would be like. With access to Fusion, Synchro, Xyz, and Link monsters, Extra deck construction becomes quite challenging, as there is just not enough room for all the tools at the player's disposal. Speaking of which, let's segue into talking about these new white cards and ask the question, what's a tuna? The Thunini tribe is a monophyletic clade comprising 15 species and 5 genera, but Tuner is a new ability featured on the ability line. The ability line is the area that Konami has struggled with, as the Flip, Tune, Union, and Gemini abilities were all introduced on effect monsters. But the Tuner ability was printed on normal monsters for the first time. This is exploring new design space when it comes to normal monsters, as tuners have some degree of inherent utility, but it also has the effect of somewhat denaturing normal monsters for the absolute purist. This does broaden the appeal of cards like Unexpected Die or Summoner's Art, which can be used to search for Labradorite Dragon. But I would argue that normal Pendulum monsters did more for normal representation overall. I think there is an underrated elegance when it comes to the Synchro Summon, and not just how the anime characters would recite haiku each time they performed a Synchro Summon. Since Synchro monsters require a combination of at least one tuner and at least one non-tuner monster, a lot of older swarming monsters, which could easily get themselves on field, now have additional utility beyond being used for just tribute fodder. In addition, the nature of Synchro monsters requiring the sum of the levels of their material to equal the level of the Synchro monster adds a lot of strategic depth in both the deck building phase and the turn-to-turn gameplay, with frantic arithmetic and checking the extra deck for a way to get out of the current situation. Later mechanics, specifically Xyz and Links, simplified the process, removing the need for addition and moving the game towards more generic extra deck monsters, as Xyz care only about levels and monster count, while Links only care about the monster count and link rating. Synchros come in several levels of specificity, some from requiring specific tuners, to requiring particular attributes or types of monsters, to completely generic outside of the level requirements. Early Fusion monsters required specific materials, and although cards like Chimera Tech Overdragon have somewhat flexible materials, I would say that the elemental hero monsters were the first real step into an extra deck toolbox. Jaden had so many Fusion monsters. You could take just about any 2 heroes, add polymerization, and get something out of the extra deck. Then, with the introduction of the Omni heroes, a hero combined with any other monster could always bring out at least one monster from the extra deck. Jaden's Fusion deck is a good attempt at turning the extra deck into a toolbox for solving problems, but is held back by the poor card economy of the Fusion summon. The Synchro Summon is generally better in terms of card economy, since tuners remove the requirement for polymerization. Synchro monsters do retain one important aspect of Fusion monsters, and that is boss status. A lot of Synchro monsters feel like formidable boss cards, like Scrap Dragon, Colossal Fighter, Vault Ruler Archfiend, and specifically Shooting Quasar Dragon. Each takes a good amount of resources committed to bring them out, but offer strong field presence and even some utility effects. Quasar in particular actually points out another strength of the Synchro mechanic, that being Synchro climbing, or using smaller Synchro monsters as intermediates before making the final boss monster. A great example being with TG Hyper Librarian, which offers card draw while Synchro climbing. This does point out the weakness of limiting extra deck size, as Synchro climbing can require a lot of dedicated extra deck slots, but that might be a future design space problem, more so than one specifically with the Synchro mechanic in the 5Ds era. From Black Rose to Stardust, the Synchro era really cemented the idea of an extra deck toolbox, and as a result is such an exciting way to start off the third generation of Yu-Gi-Oh! The introduction of tuner monsters breathed new life into older cards, and the semi-generic nature of Synchro monsters forever changed the design space in the extra deck. This set of master rules constitute a major improvement in my opinion, and I am so excited to start covering the 5Ds era.